Welcome to Metrical. Today I'm going to do a revision on personnel management N5 November 2020, a full paper revision. Right. So I'm going to question one. Right. Indicate whether the following statements are true or false by only writing true or false next to the question number. Here you're going to write true or false next to the question number. Right, let's go to question 1.1. Right, personnel research uses information obtained to manage people effectively. That's true. That's true. The answer is true. Right, it uses what? Information that is obtained to manage employees effectively. Let's go to 1.2. Surveys can also be called field studies. It's a true statement. Surveys are also called field studies. So we're talking about surveys are also called what? Field studies. Right. Let's go to 1.3. Screening eliminates applicants whose characteristics do not match the minimum requirements of the job. That's true. When we screen, we are eliminating. It is an elimination process whereby you eliminate or you remove people or candidates who do not meet the minimum requirements of the job. That's what you call screening, right? So let's go to 1.4. Placement enables organizations to achieve its goals optimally. Placement, right? Placement, right? So placement is a process whereby you are placing the right candidate to a vacant position. That's what we call placement. Normally, placement is the final stage of the recruitment process, right? So the statement is true. Placement enables organization to achieve its optimal goals. Right? That's a true statement. It's a true statement. Right. Let's go to 1.5. Job evaluation is determination of a job's relative worth in terms of recruitment. That's wrong. Job evaluation is the determination of a job's relative worth in terms of remuneration, not recruitment. So the answer is false. It's a false statement. Let's go to 1.6. The process of receiving and welcoming employees when they first join the organization is called screening. That's false. The process of welcoming and receiving employees within their organization when they first join the organization, we call it induction process or induction program or planning. Induction, right? Let's go to, so the answer, the statement here is false. The statement here is false, right? The process of welcoming new candidates in an organization, we call it induction. Let's go to 1.7. The encounter stage starts when the employee accepts the offer of employment. That's false. Pre-arrival stage is when it starts when the employee accepts the offer of employment. So the statement is what? Is false. The statement is false. Pre-arrival is the correct answer. Right. Let's move on to 1.8. Assessment centers were developed in order to identify managerial talents. That's a true statement. So the answer is true. They were developed to identify managerial talents. Right, let's go to 1.9. Commission is a weekly payment. That's false. Commission is the payment used, maybe it's used for sales staff to motivate them. They use commission. The commission, when there's a certain percentage that a salesperson can receive, right? Once maybe, for example, a sale has been done, right? So let's go to 1.10, right? The aim of recruitment is to match individual competence with organizational requirements. The answer is true, right? So 1.9, commission is a weekly payment. That's false. And then number 10, 1.10 is true. The answer is true, right? So let's move on to the next question. Right? Right. So we're going to question 2. Question 2. Right. So 2.1. Right. The systematic gathering, here you are supposed to match column A with the description in column B, right? So the systematic gathering and interpretation of information. The systematic gathering and interpretation of information is what we call a research. A research is the systematic gathering and interpretation of what? Of information, right? Let's go to 2.2. 2.2, right? Verbal or written description of a real life situation. We call it a case study. A case study, which is A, right? Let's go to 2.3. 2.3. 2.3. Let's go to 2.3. Must measure what it is supposed to measure. What we call it? We call it what? Validity. Validity it means that a test must measure what it is supposed to measure. Right, let's go to 2.4. 2.4. 2.4, right. General attitude an individual employee has about his or her job. We call it what you call a job satisfaction, right? Job satisfaction or a satisfaction, right? Which is C. Let's go to 2.5. 2.5 takes place when employees shows potential to take responsibility, right? What takes place when employees show potential to take responsibility? So the answer is I, which is job enrichment. Job enrichment, which is I. Job enrichment. Right. So let's go to 2.6. Right. Refers to absence without leave. We call it what? Absenteeism, which is B. Absenteeism, which is B. When one is absent without leave, we call it advertisement. Sorry, absenteeism. Right. So let's go to 2.7. 2.7. Employee moving horizontally to another department or a position. We call it transfer. It is a transfer. Meaning to say, the employee will keep his position in a different department, right? So let's go to 2.8. 2.8. loss of responsibility, status, and compensation. We call it what to call? We call it a demotion. When someone is demoted, he will lose his responsibility, his status, and compensation, right? Let's go to 2.9. Conducted by 3 to 5 interviewers. We call it a panel interview, which is F. And then 2.10. Right. 2.10 refers to a person's ability to perform a task. We call it the ability for a person to perform a task. We call it an aptitude test, which is H. An aptitude test, H. So let's go to another question. Right. You are now on section B, whereby you are supposed to choose 4 questions. You're not supposed to answer all questions, right? So you choose any 4 questions, right? So let's go to question 3. Question 3. Question 3. Question 3. Right, let's read the scenario. Solomon Rachel is the general manager of Lengana supermarket in Sesok. He realized the importance of the overall process of attracting, shortlisting, selecting, and appointing suitable candidates for a job within the organization. All right. Solomon Rachel is the general manager of Lengana supermarket in Seshoko. He realizes the importance of the overall process of attracting, shortlisting, selecting, and appointing suitable candidate for a job within the organization. So answer the following questions with regard to recruitment, right? So you're supposed to answer with regard to recruitment, right? So let's go to question 3.1. Right. Name the 5 aims of recruitment. What are the aims of recruitment? Right. So, to maintain an adequate supply of labor. To maintain an adequate supply of employees. Right. Another aim of recruitment is to match individual competence with organizational requirements. To match individual competences with the organizational requirements. We want to match the competence of the individual with what the organization requires. And then number 3, to create a positive image of the organization. Imagine an organization that does not recruit. It will be having a negative image. to match the organizational, right, for the organization. And also to contribute to the profitability, of the organization. Recruitment is done so that the organization becomes profitable. So that it becomes profitable. Right. And lastly, to ensure that the organization does not lose out, to quality candidates. To ensure that the organization does not lose out, to quality candidates. That's why the organization recruits, so that it will not lose out to quality candidates. Right, let's go to 3.2. Name 5 aspects that Solomon must include in the recruitment policy to ensure a fair process is followed. Right. So we are talking about aspects of the recruitment process. Right. Aspects of the recruitment process. Right. So 3.2, sorry. 3.2, right. Supposed to make sure that he includes aspects of the recruitment process, or we can say policy, right? So Solomon must make sure that the organization is the what? A policy which guides the recruitment. 1, an organizational policy, recruitment policy. Right, which guides the recruitment of potential employees. There should be a recruitment policy. Right. Number 2, suppose also to include that the policy must adhere to the current legislation. It must adhere to the current legislation. Supposed to be according to the current legislation of the country, the recruitment policy. Right. Number 3, right. So it's supposed also to include the way an organization the way an organization functions, the way an organization functions is another important determinant, is another important determinant, is another important determinant of its recruitment policy, the way the organization functions. And also, Solomon must also include that the policy must spell out who is responsible for the recruitment process. Or recruitment process. And lastly, the technology in an organization, the technology in the organization is production, processes, its unique products and services. And services supposed to be included, right? So let's go to 3.3. 3.3. Right. State 4 reasons why management should rather not use internal sources of recruitment. Reasons why management should rather not use internal sources of recruitment. So here, in other words, why does the organization decides not to promote employees within the organizations for vacant positions, but rather recruiting, right? So we are on 3.3, right? Reasons why the organization might decide to recruit from outside. Sometimes it might be that they don't want to lose the opportunity to consider good candidates. Losing opportunities to consider good candidates from outside or good applicants from outside the organization. From outside the organization, they will lose out. Right. 2, another reason is they don't want to lose opportunity of bringing out an opportunity of bringing out innovative or bring out or to bring innovative candidates who bring out in who bring in new ideas in an organization. And also incurring high training cost if they decide to recruit internally, because the person might not have the necessary experience and skills for that position. And sometimes promoted employees that they do not rise to the challenge. Promoted employees, they do not rise to the challenge. Promoted employees does not rise to the standard or to the challenge. That's why they would decide to recruit from outside. That's why they do want to recruit from outside rather than internal. Right. So let's move on to question 3.4. Name 6 external sources of recruitment. So we're going to list 6 external sources of recruitment. 3.4. Right. External, we need to say outside the organization. External recruitment is when it recruits outside the organization. We have what we call walk-ins. Those people who walk in to seek employment. And it happens that there is a vacant. We also have referrals. Those people who were referred by their relatives and friends, right? And then there is also what we call campus recruitment, whereby companies will go to an university or a college to recruit candidates. And also temporary helps or temporary employees. Temporary employees, those people who will be working in a temporary position. And then when a vacant arises, they will be promoted or they will be employed in permanent position. Right. We also have what we call headhunters. Headhunters. Right? Headhunters. Right? And executive search consultants. Executive search consultant. Consultant. Consultants. Right. Let's move on to question 3.5. Question 3.5. Right. So state the 3 aims of recruitment advertising. Aims of recruitment advertising. Aims of recruitment advertising. 3.5. Right. To attract enough candidates they want to attract enough candidates, right? They also want to create a favorable image for the organization. To create a favorable image for the organization. And also, they want to advertise to the correct person or to the correct audience. To advertise to the correct audience. We want to advertise to the correct audience, right? Based on the analysis, of organizational needs. Right. So let's move on to question 4. Question 4. Right. After receiving and screening several applicants, the selection panel compiles a short list of potential candidates, and then they will start the selection process. Right. Answer the following questions with regard to selection. Right. 4.1, list 5 internal factors of selection. Right. Internal factors of selection. Right. 5 internal. Question 4. Question 4. Right. 4.1. We're going to list 5 internal factors of selection. Internal factors of selection. Internal factors of selection. Right. We have 1, the information provided. Information provided also affects what? Selection. We also have the size of the organization. Sorry. The size of the organization. Three, the number of the applicants. The number of the applicants. All right. 4, trade union pressure. Trade union pressure. And lastly, the capabilities of people who are recruiting. Are they capable of people involved in the selection? Are they capable of selection? The trade union pressure, you can find that trade union might have some positions that they want their members to occupy. The number of applicants, the larger the number, the more the applicants, the more complicated the process becomes, right? The information provided, right? If there is information provided about the candidate, it will be very easy to do the selection process. Right. Let's go to 4.2, 4.2, 4.2, right? Name and explain 6 interview techniques the selection panel can use. 6 interview techniques that the selection process can use. 4.2 interview techniques. We have one. We have what we call structured interview. Structured interview, whereby specific questions, direct and pre-planned questions are asked. And also it is based on job specification, right? And then there's also another one, which is what we call unstructured. Unstructured interview. Unstructured interview. Here, which is an opposite of a structured interview, whereby questions are broad and general, they are not specific. And then applicants give as much information as they want, and questions are normally open-ended, right? We also have what we call semi-structured, which is a combination of both structured and unstructured, semi-structured interviews, right? And then the fourth one, which is what we call a panel interview, whereby more than one interviewer, right? There'll be more than one interviewer, right? And lastly, stress interview. Stress interview. Stress interview, whereby candidates will be subjected to pressure. They'll be subjected to pressure. The main aim of this stress interview is to find out about the candidate's value, his styles, and his characteristic. They want to identify the characteristic of the candidate, right? So they put him under a sort of pressure so that they'll be able to find out his values, his personal styles and characteristics. Right. Let's go to 4.3. 4.3. Provide the 10 selection panel with 10 general, provide the selection panel with 10 guidelines to conduct effective interviews. So here we're going to list guidelines to conduct an interview. Guidelines to conduct an interview, right? Guidelines when conducting an interview, right? So here, 10, you're supposed to use trained and experience. Use trained and experienced. Trained and experienced interviewers. Those who know, right, who have the experience. You're supposed to make sure that you clearly define the objectives. Clearly defines the objectives of the interview, right? And how these will be achieved, and how these objectives will be achieved, right? Right. 3, right. Prepare the questions that will be asked. You're supposed to prepare the questions that will be asked. right? And also ensure that the candidate has a clear understanding of the requirements. Ensure candidates has a clear understanding of the requirements. Right. Right. And also ensure that the applicants provides clear answers. Ensure that the applicants provides the correct answers. Provides the correct answers. Right. You should also allow the interviewee an opportunity to ask questions. You're supposed to allow the interviewee opportunity to ask questions. And also, you're supposed to make sure that you organize a tour about the organization. Organize a tour about a tour about organize a tour around the organization. And also, you are supposed to ensure that the interview is private. Ensure that the interview is private. Right? And also avoid interruptions. Avoid interruptions. During the interview. You're supposed to avoid interruptions during the interview. You're supposed to indicate to the candidate that the interview is about to end. Indicate when the interview is about to end. Right. There are so many of them. You're supposed to write an interview report. You're supposed to write an interview report as soon as possible. As soon as possible. You're supposed to ensure that you write a report, right? In case you are interviewing more than one person, right? Let's move on to question 4.4, right? Name 3 reasons for testing the potential of applicants as part of the selection process. 3 reasons for testing the potential of applicants, right? The reason why the applicants are tested, right, is because they want to match or to compare them. They also want to measure the applicants' skills. They want to measure the applicants' skills, to measure the applicant's skills. Right. Which is question 1. Question 4.4. Right. The reason why they do testing, right? 1, to measure the applicant skills and ability. They want to measure the applicant's skills and ability to learn on the job. They want to measure the candidate's ability to learn on the job. They also want to, they do tests so that they will determine the candidate's ability, because they want to determine the candidate's intelligence, his ability, his interest, right? To determine the applicant's abilities, interests. What else? Intelligence. They want to determine, and aptitude. Right. And also, we also want to get a true picture of the candidate, to get a true picture of the candidate, apart from his CV, right? We want to get a true picture of the candidate. So they do testing, right? Yes. So let's move on to question 5. Right. Question 5. Question 5. Question 5. Right. Before performance appraisal systems are put in place, there should be a clear agreement between employees and management about the objectives of the appraisal. Managing employee performance is a key managerial responsibilities. 5.11. 5.11. Right. List the 5 steps in the performance appraisal process. Right. So I'm going to list the steps in the performance appraisal process. Right. The first step is setting performance objectives. We set performance objectives and standards. Right. And then step number 2, it is when there will be day-to-day performance coaching. Performance coaching. Number 3, that's when there will be a formal performance review and appraisal. Formal performance review and appraisal. Right. Step number 4, that is when an annual performance appraisal is conducted. Annual performance appraisal will be conducted. Is conducted. Step number 5, that's when the appraisal ratings will be forwarded to the Human Resource Department for record keeping. Right. Forwarded appraisal ratings to Human Resource Department. So these are the steps in the performance appraisal process. Setting performance objectives and standards, and then after that, there will be day-to-day performance coaching whereby people will be coached whilst they are doing their job, and then there will be formal performance review and appraisal, and then the annual performance appraisal, and lastly, the appraisal ratings will be submitted to the Human Resource Department. Right. So let's move on to 5.12. 5.12. Name 10 pitfalls of performance appraisal. Name 10 potential pitfalls. Right. Pitfalls are negative or disadvantages. Negative or disadvantages. So we're going to list 10 pitfalls of performance appraisal. Right. Which is 5.12. 5.12. Right. So we can find that it has an impact on teamwork rather than on individual work. And also, it has information problems. And it has an actual impact. It involves administrative load. Too much paperwork is involved. Right. And then also find out that there is a design problem. Trade union opposes this type of appraisal. And also inappropriate standards are measured or are set. Inappropriate standards are set. You can find that results are ignored, especially if they are negative. Results are ignored. People tend to ignore negative results. Results are ignored. Right? And you can find that poor quality, there's a poor quality measurement. Poor quality measurement. Right. And lastly, it does not recognize risk taking. Does not recognize risk taking. Does not recognize risk taking. Right. Let's go to 5.13. Name and explain 5 different approaches to performance appraisal. Right. There are different types of approaches or methods of performance appraisals. 5.13. Right. We have what we call the traditional approach. Traditional approach. Right. The traditional approach, it is conducted by relevant department manager or the immediate supervisor. This one is conducted by the departmental manager. Or immediate supervisor. Right? And also, let's move on to another approach. This one is the first one. The second approach, which is what we call peer rating. Peer rating. Right. Here, it allows employees to be rated on prepared forms by co-workers. Employees are rated or are evaluated by co-workers. Right. Number 3, which is what we call subordinate appraisal. Subordinate appraisal. Subordinate appraisal. Right. Whereby employees in the lower level will be rating seniors. right? Juniors, evaluating seniors at work in an organization. That's what we call subordinate rating. And then number 5, we have what we call 360-degree rating. 360-degree evaluation, whereby an employee is rated by everyone within the organization. So performance evaluation is done by the full cycle of daily conducts that an employee may have, right? Evaluation is done by a full cycle, by a full cycle daily conducts that the employee have. Right. So let's move on to question 5.2. 5.2. Name 5 limitations of a job evaluation. You are supposed to learn, list the limitations of a job evaluation. Limitations of a job evaluation. 5.2. Right. So you can find that it is costly to maintain. It's very costly to maintain. And also, there is a danger of oversimplification. There's a danger of oversimplification, right? And also, it relies on human judgment. It relies on human judgment. It relies on human judgment. And then you can find that averaging does not make the system more objective. Averaging does not make the system does not make the system more objective. Let's go to 5.3. Differentiate between salary and take-home money. Right, salary is the money that you receive before the deductions. Salary is the money that the employee receives before deduction. And a salary, it is paid on a specific interval, e.g., it might be in the end of the month or per fortnight, right? And also it is paid to permanent workers. Right. So we're going to differentiate a salary and a take-home money. Right? Salary, it is a compensation paid to permanent workers. Paid to permanent employees. At a regular interval. So in other words, it is money before deductions. It is money paid before deductions. So let's discuss take-home money. Take-home money. Right. So take-home money is money that the employee receive after deductions. Amount of money that the employee receives after deductions. After deductions. Deductions like tax, UIF, and pension. So let's go to 5.4. 5.4, name the factors which influence the introduction of fringe benefits. Factors influencing the introduction of fringe benefits. What factors influence the introduction of fringe benefits? Which is 5.4. 5.4. 5.4, right. One of the factors that influence fringe benefits or the introduction of fringe benefits was the nature of the organization. Nature of the organization. The nature of the organization. 2, the labor market conditions. The labor market conditions. 3, the financial position of the organization. The financial position of the organization. You need to say, if the organization is financially stable, it can be able to administer what? Fringe benefits. Suppose it can be able to administer fringe benefits. right? And then 5, trade union. Right. Really about labor unions participation, right? Right. And also the extent to which benefits satisfy individual needs. The extent to which benefits satisfy, does the benefits satisfy individual needs? Right. So these are the 5 factors which influence what? The introduction of fringe benefits. Let's go to question 6. Question 6. Right. Briefly explain each of the following terms. So each term has 5 marks. You need to explain, right? So when you're explaining, the most important thing is you're supposed to give a definition. The first question is induction, 6.61. 6.61. 6.61. Six point six one, 6.11, sorry, right. Induction. So induction, it is the process of welcoming and receiving employees when they first join the organization. The process of receiving and welcoming new employees when they join the organization. That's what we call induction. Induction learning, induction process, the induction process. So here you are going to explain the value of induction or aims of induction. You're also going to give aims of induction, the aims of induction. You're also going to give the types of induction. Types of induction. One of the aims of induction is to make sure that his first days are made easier so that he become more productive as soon as possible, right? And also to meet the employee realistic expectations, right? And then you're going to write types of induction. There's what we call organizational induction. We have departmental induction. We also have employee induction, etc. Right. So let's move on to question 6.12, reward management. Right. Reward management is just a process of rewarding individuals for their levels of what? Performance, right, within an organization, right? When we are talking about reward management, we are talking about the process of rewarding an employee for their level of performance. It's a system of rewarding an employee for their level of performance. And for the level of their job, right, within an organization, right? So we can also talk about the aims of what reward management. Maybe you can say it aims to reward employees fairly. Right? It also aims to reward individuals for their work also aims to reward employees for their work and also their diligence etc. Right. So, right. So you should know that when you are defining, make sure that you include a definition, the aims, etc. Right. So let's move on to the next question, which is question 6.13, termination of service. Termination of service. 6.13. 6.13. Right. So termination of service, it refers to the employee leaving the service of the employer. Right. When an employee leaves the service of the employer. Right. So it can be initiated by both the employer and the employee. It can be initiated. It can be initiated by both the employer and employee. So we need to say the employer may decide to terminate the what? The service of the employee. We need to say that's what you call dismissal, okay? Right. So it can also be voluntary. It can be voluntary. One can decide to terminate, or compulsory, whereby the employee will be asked to leave. Maybe we're talking about retirement, right? Or a boarding, whereby he cannot be able to offer service because of maybe illness, is no longer capable, right? We're talking about resigning, we're talking about laying, right? etc. Right. So let's go to question 6.14, job satisfaction. Job satisfaction. Job satisfaction. Job satisfaction. Job satisfaction, which is 6.14. Job satisfaction is the general attitude that the employee has towards his job. The general attitude that the employee has towards his job. Towards his job. So meaning to say a person might have a negative or a positive attitude. A person might have a negative or a positive. It can be negative or positive. Right. Right. So remember, you're supposed also to include why it can be negative or positive. So it depends on the employee's general quality of life. Depends also on the employee's general quality of life, right? And also, it differentiates between rewards employees receive. Differentiate between the rewards employees receives. Differentiate the rewards of an employee, right? And then lastly, the last question, which is on question 1.5, 1.6.1, job rotation. Job rotation. Right. Job rotation. Job rotation. So I want to define what is explaining what is job rotation. So we're going to give a definition. A job rotation. Right. Job rotation normally involves the movement of employees from one job position to another. Movement of employees from one job position to another, right? And this type of rotation assist employees with careers. With careers. One will be able to identify where his strength is, right? And also you can find that the aim of job rotation is to expose employees to different experiences. The aim is to expose employees to different experiences, so that the employee will have exposure, right, in different job positions. So let's go to question 6.2. 6.2. Question 6.2. Question 6.2. Job satisfaction is not guaranteed, but it is more likely to be at a high level when it is influenced by certain factors. Name six of these factors. It is not guaranteed when it is more likely to be at a high level when it is influenced by certain factors. So we're going to name six factors that influence job satisfaction. Right. Factors influencing job satisfaction. Right. 6.2. 6.2. Right. It is when the job is a higher status. The job is a higher status. It is impossible for job repetition. And also, when there is a good match between employees' expectations and the job content. Right? When they are supportive, colleagues, right? And also when supervisors take an interest in the employees' needs. When supervisors takes an interest in employees' interest. Right? And also when the job guidance and coaching are provided. When the job guidance and coaching are provided. When the job guidance and coachings are provided. And lastly, when the job fits the personality of the employee. When the job fits the personality of the employee, when the job meets the personality of the employee. Right. Okay, let's go to 6.3. 6.3, provide 3 reasons why job enrichment should be applied in companies. Right. Reasons why job enrichment should be applied in companies. Reasons for applying job enrichment. You can find that job enrichment will increase productivity. It also increases morale. It also lowers labor turnover. 6.3, advantages of a job enrichment. In other words, so there is increased productivity. There's also increased motivation. Increase the motivation. The employees in the organization, they become motivated. Motivation increased, right? And also lower labor turnover or staff turnover. It lowers labor turnover or staff turnover. And also, it lowers absenteeism. Lowers absenteeism, right? As well as it also increases what? Increases job satisfaction. It increases job satisfaction. As well as improve quality of work. Improve quality. Improve quality of work. Right. So these are the advantages of job enrichment, advantages of implementing job enrichment at work. There will be increased productivity, increased motivation, there's lower staff turnover, lower absenteeism, increased job satisfaction, as well as improvement in quality of work. Improvement in quality of work. Right. So let's move on to the next question, which is the last one. Question 7. Question 7. Right. 7.1. Question 7. Question 7. 7.1. Various factors jeopardize health and safety in the organization or workplace. Names 10 factors. Name 10 factors that could put the safety of workers in jeopardy. And so we're going to list 10 factors that might risk the health of workers within an organization. Right. So sometimes absence of protective devices, can also jeopardize health of the employees. It might be failure to comply with the safety regulations, with the safety regulations, and also it might be inadequate ventilation, it might be due to inadequate lighting when there is no enough light. Right. It might be due to poor housekeeping. Poor housekeeping. It may be due to lack of training. It might also due to putting the wrong person in the workplace. The wrong person in the workplace. And also, it might be lack of enforcement of safety, lack of enforcement of safety. It is also due to ineffective specifications for safety clothing, ineffective specification for safety clothing. Or it also might be due to using the wrong tools, use of wrong tools, and also it might be due to the presence of hazardous materials. Right. So let's move on to question 7.2. List 5 factors causing absenteeism. 5 factors causing absenteeism. Why do people absent themselves? What are the causes? 1, it might be due to personal problems. It might be due to personal problems. One is facing what? Problems. When one is facing problems, for example, is going through a divorce, right? Or might be substance abuse. Might be due to transport problems, or due to illness. It might also be due to industrial accidents. Might be also due to industrial accidents. And lastly, age and gender. Age and gender. Right. If it's for a female, sometimes maybe it might be due to problems or illness associated with what? With women, right? So it might also cause an individual to be absent at work. Right, let's go to 7.3. 7.3, list 4 factors influencing staff turnover. Factors influencing staff turnover. 7.3. 7.3, factors influencing staff turnover. Right, it might be due to lack of induction. Lack of induction. Might also be to lack of communication. and also due to inappropriate induction process and selection, whereby a wrong candidate has been appointed. Recruitment and selection. Right. And also, it may also be due to limited promotional opportunities. Limited promotional opportunities. So this will cause the factors. These are the factors that causes what? Staff turnover. Right. Let's go from 7.4. Name 5 methods to overcome absenteeism and high turnover in the workplace. Method to overcome absenteeism. You're supposed to list 5 of them. 5 methods, right? So we're going to 7.4. So method that can be used whereby 1, they should analyze absenteeism data. Analyze absenteeism data. 2, they should also ensure effective supervision. Ensure effective supervision. They should also ensure professional selection. They should also ensure professional selection so that the best candidates will be selected. They should also maintain a sound reward system. Maintain a sound reward system. We should also maintain a sound reward system. We should also sponsor daycare for children. Employer to sponsor daycare for children. Right? And lastly, they're supposed to make sure that they implement what we call flexing time. Implement flexing time. They should implement flexing time. They should implement flexing time. Right. Let's go to 7.5. Summarize the difference between on the job and off the job training. Right. On the job and off the job. So we're going to start by discussing on the job and then we'll discuss off the job. 7.5 of the job. Of the job, right? So off the job is when training is given outside the organization. Training is outside the organization. E.g. in institutions. And then you can also find that off-job training does not train by doing. Does not train by doing. Right. And also, it is done for a short period of time. It is done for a short period of time. For a short period of time. And also, can find that off-job training, right, aims to change the interpersonal skills and attitudes of the workers. It aims to change the interpersonal skills and attitudes of employees. And also, off-job training may have little follow-up. It may have little follow-up. So let's go to on-job training. On-the-job training. On-the-job training. Right. So this type of training takes place in an organization. And also, it's concentrated on the individual. Concentrated on the individual, not the group. And it concentrated on the actual work situation. On the actual work situation. And also, on-job training allows for only perceptive of the organization. Allows only is perceptive perceptive of the organization. So let's go to 7.6. 7.6. Define the term career development. Career development, right? Career development is the way to sustain or increase employee development or employee productivity, while also assisting them to meet the challenges of the outside world in the organization, right? So career development is a way an organization, it is the way an organization can sustain employees' productivity while assisting employees to meet the challenges of the world outside. That's career development, so that it becomes more marketable outside the organization, right? So let's go to 7.7, define training. Training is the acquisition of specific work-related skills, right? 7.7, training is the acquisition of specific work-related skills in order to support the organization outputs. Right. That's the definition for training. Right, training. Right, that's the definition of training. So I think this is the end of the lesson. Thank you so much for your time. Please do not forget to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, please follow, like, and comment, right, so that I will be able to improve. Right, thank you so much. Have a good day.